As I said earlier, everyone has a story, and our next speaker, Audie Brown, has decided to share hers tonight with you. Welcome, Audie.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to all of you for coming tonight. This night is about raising awareness around violence and abuse against women and girls and all vulnerable people in our community. It's very important to me that we raise awareness about these issues, important enough that I'm willing to share my very personal story with you, a story about abuse, control, and intimidation. Above all, it's a story about hope and the support that carries one through in the face of adversity. I come from a family of 8. I was the 3rd oldest. My next youngest sibling was born when I was about 4 years old. My mom always joked that all my younger siblings belonged to me once she brought them home. I doted on them, I took care of them, I quite simply just loved them to pieces. I love babies. As I got older, my dream in life was to get married and have children. When I was 18, I met a man 10 years older than me. We married when I was 20, and I had my son Christopher when I was almost 22. From the beginning, the marriage was rocky, various forms of abuse and control, isolation from my family. During the short marriage, there were at least 5 separations, and each time I would go back. I was sure that things would change, that things would get better. Each time, the situation got worse. I remember that final separation. Christopher had just had his first birthday. There was a huge fight, and as I picked myself up off the floor for that last time, I knew in my heart that this was it. I was not going to live my life like this. I was not going to have my precious child see life like this. We separated. During the next month, my ex-husband cajoled, threatened, pleaded, and begged. I said no. I said, this is done. Every once in a while, you make a decision, and in your gut, you know that no matter how hard that road might be to travel, that decision is the right one. I stuck to my guns. About 2 months after the split, my ex-husband came to our home to pick up his personal belongings. Of course, Christopher was happy to see him. Once he had most of his things, he picked Christopher up, saying as he did, "I'll give you a hug goodbye." Then he started out the door with Christopher. Alarm bells rang in my head and I went after them. He ran to his car with Christopher in his arms and me running right behind. I tried to get into the car, but he was too fast. He had locked the doors. I chased after them as he raced off down the street. He had kidnapped my baby. It happened on a Saturday. With my family supporting me, we contacted the RCMP. They could do nothing at that point. There was no custody agreement. I didn't have custody, neither of us did. I had to wait until Monday morning to consult a lawyer. We went to family court and got what is called an ex parte custody order. With that in hand, I was able to get the police searching. They weren't all that helpful. They said, it's only his father who took him. He'll come back. I tried to do everything that I could, contacting his family and our friends. No success. About 3 months later, I received a call from a mutual friend whom my ex-husband had gone to visit. This man really did a great thing. He got the license plate of the car and contacted me. I contacted the police, and they were able to pick him up. He had been living out of the back of his car with Christopher, moving around but staying close to familiar territory. It was a beautiful reunion. I had Christopher back, and now we could figure out custody, do what worked for all of us. Life could go on. My ex-husband was given supervised access to our son. The people who supervised were mutual friends and said they would do this for us. After the 2nd or 3rd visit, they said, we can't do it. They said all this man does during the visits is to tell Christopher what an awful person his mother is. Christopher was 16 months old at the time. On the advice of my lawyer, we had my ex-husband sign a legal undertaking swearing that he would not break the court order of custody and visitation. I trusted people to keep their promises. I always tried to keep mine, so I did as the lawyer suggested. We went ahead with working out unsupervised access and custody details. On August 30th, 1980, my ex-husband came to pick Christopher up for his first weekend of unsupervised access. It seemed strange after the fact. At the time, I felt good. We had figured this out and it would all be okay. Christopher would come home on Sunday evening at 6, and in the meantime, I would enjoy the weekend. Christopher did not come home on Sunday evening. I was living in Edmonton at the time and called the city police. They told me to wait until Monday night. It was a long weekend, and maybe my ex-husband thought that long weekend visits were just that. I was frantic, but I agreed to wait it out. Monday evening came and went. Many days, evenings, and nights came and went. My son had been kidnapped again. The police were unwilling to lay an official kidnapping charge, again noting that it was domestic. It took me a year to get my ex-husband charged with kidnapping, and then only because I laid a private information charge. I can't even begin to describe my mental state during the first 2 or 3 months after this second time. I did a lot of things to block out the pain and the hopelessness. I was lucky though. My parents, my family, and my friends were incredible supports. Amongst everyone, there was a balance between understanding my pain, letting me feel that pain, and reminding me that I had to be strong and keep it together. At some point, I realized I'd better do something, anything, so that when I did find Christopher, I would be able to be his mother and to support him. I went back to school. I had quit in grade 11. I finished high school and went on to college. I finished college and went to work. I tried to live my life as best I could, all the while trying to figure out ways to find Christopher. I had a lot of support during that time from my family and friends, and from Child Find. Neither my family nor I had a lot of extra cash for private investigators, and the police didn't actively search. There was one Edmonton City Police detective who was a great support. He tried very hard to help me. One thing was for sure, he always listened when I called him. It didn't get Christopher back. Months passed, then years passed. In November of 1988, I received a call at my place of work from the RCMP saying they had found my son in Fox Creek, Alberta. A wonderful woman saw him riding his bike around when kids should have been in school. She thought he looked like a child whose picture was on the milk cartons through Child Find. The police investigated. It was Christopher. I will forever be grateful to this woman who reported what she saw. She remains anonymous. She didn't want to reveal her identity. Christopher had been gone for over 8 years. I'm not sure how to explain the reunion. We didn't know each other. I was told to go to the social services office in Whitecourt, Alberta to pick him up. We had to wait for about 3 hours once we got there because Christopher wouldn't come in. His dad had told him I didn't want him. Once he arrived, we were put into a room alone. This room had one-way glass, as social workers wanted to see how we would interact with each other before I would be able to go home with him. I hugged him. He hugged me back. My sister had come with me to Whitecourt for moral support. She stood on the other side of that glass with a group of about 20 people, and apparently there wasn't a dry eye among them. Now Christopher and I needed to get to know each other. From what I could gather, he and his dad had spent about 8.5 years, most of the 8.5 years, moving around a lot in the States, and had come back and forth to Canada to see my ex-husband's family a number of times. Even though there was a Canada-wide warrant out for his arrest, the border crossings had never been picked up. Add to that, I had contacted my ex-husband's mother frequently over the years. She always said she had no contact and felt worse than I did because it was her son who had kidnapped Christopher. I felt so betrayed. Christopher was a bright child. Even though he had not been in school, he was able to go into the right grade level and do just fine academically. Our counselors said that he was socially regressed and it would take a year for every year that he was away to come through the regression. We kept working through this. Concurrently, there were the legal issues. I was expected to participate in conciliation counseling through family court services so that we could determine what was best for Christopher. I have to say I was appalled that I would have to go through this. This man had kidnapped my child, had taken a large chunk out of Christopher's life with me. I again received incredible support from my family. My youngest brother came with me when conciliation counseling took place. He said nothing. He was just there to support me in whatever way I needed. He was my rock. I spent about 10 minutes in that first conciliation counseling session and couldn't do it. My ex-husband wasted no time in putting me down. The meeting spiraled out of control. I left. The courts then decided that they needed to figure out who was the best parent. We went through psychological testing and numerous home visits. In the end, it was decided that I was the best parent and my home was the safest place for Christopher. My ex-husband would get supervised access with a court-appointed psychologist as the supervisor. At the same time that the assessments were taking place, my ex-husband was facing kidnapping charges. I had to attend the trial and I had to testify. Again, my younger brother was with me. I spent about 8 hours on the stand over several days and was accused of a lot of things. My ex-husband was given 2 years. Crown prosecutor thought it was amazing that the judge had given him 2 years. After all, it was only a domestic dispute. The judge's comment as he handed down the sentence was this: "Other than this incident, you have led an exemplary life." An exemplary life. That felt like a knife in my back. For over 8 years, I had no idea whether my child was dead or alive, whether he was okay or not, and the judge talked about this man leading an exemplary life. Thankfully, we know the justice system takes kidnapping more seriously now, parental or otherwise. It's come a long way since 1989. Christopher and I had many ups and downs over the next couple of years. We went through the honeymoon stage and then went through some very difficult times. One day, when he was almost 13 years old, he said that he wanted to go back and live with his dad. He said, "It's not that I don't love you, Mom. I'm just used to my dad." After a lot of soul searching, I decided to let go. I lost him one more time. Christopher is now 33 years old. We have a good relationship. We understand each other. He's a very important part of our lives. He has 2 sisters, and they all love each other dearly. I have an incredible life with a wonderful husband and my 3 children. Without the supports of my family, my friends, counselors, police, and other legal services, we would not be where we are today. The best way I know to live is to put one foot in front of the other, to accept support where you need it, to give support where you see the need, and to believe in yourself. Thank you.